Welcome to Ericsson IP Talk Radio, our regular podcast from the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm your host, Matthew Smith, Director of Network Marketing, and our guest today is George Antoun, Ericsson's Head of Product Area, IP and Broadband. Hello, George.
Hello, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. George, you're responsible for IP and Broadband, but I think there's a little bit more than just IP and Broadband in your group. What kind of technologies and segments do you cover?
Yeah, the PA is called IP and Broadband, but we actually cover four major technologies. The first one is what we call IP, which is both mobile and fixed, covers both the mobile and fixed side. The second one is microwave, which we enjoy a very strong position in the market. The third one is optical, both on the metro and the core, basically long haul and metro. And the fourth one is BBA, which is access, which includes both copper and fiber.
That's great. And the group actually includes a lot of acquired companies, Entrisphere in the broadband access space, for example, Marconi in the transport, but also Redback, and you came from Redback. And we've seen some success for the Redback portfolio in Ericsson, but what would you think would be a highlight of the last couple of years since the acquisition?
Actually, as you mentioned, it is an organization of multiple acquired companies, but also we brought to it a lot of Ericsson strength, particularly on the mobile side. And I'd like to start by saying all of these acquisitions have been successful in many different ways. But since you asked about Redback, Redback has been actually a very strategic acquisition, if I may say so, in multiple ways. Number one is that the Smart Edge itself has been pretty successful, not only in the traditional BRAS and MSR applications, but we've introduced it into the mobile side. So today, the Smart Edge is the cornerstone for MPBN, for backhaul applications, and for the newly deployed LTE deployment. So it's the LTE gateway. So the platform, the technology has expanded into different applications. It's been growing as a platform, and also moving forward, SEOS, which is the software that we utilize on the Smart Edge, will carry on into next generation for us, as we will mention and talk about.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we're here today is that Ericsson is announcing a new portfolio strategy at the moment for this area. As you mentioned, new developments, including the use of the common software that's been there with Smart Edge for some time. But could you say a little bit more about the new portfolio that's coming out and why we're doing this? Has something changed in the market?
Well, we're very excited about the new portfolio. It's called SSR, which is a Smart Services Router. And this platform is very unique, and it will be the first in the market. And it really has a lot to do about the trends that are happening in the market, and it's trying to address three major things. The way we see things in the market, there's a tremendous bandwidth explosion because of video applications. There's also a huge scale that will hit upon us. We talk about 50 billion devices connected in the next 10 years. That's a huge scale that will present a huge processing and signaling issues on the network. And then the third one is applications. So the platform covers these three dimensions, and we're really excited about it. It's been in design and in the making for the past 3 years, and we will release it in its first phase this year.
That's great. And it's based upon a vision that Ericsson's talking about as well, called fourth generation IP networking. Tell us a little bit more about that from your perspective.
Well, fourth generation for us really encompasses a lot of what I've talked about. But most importantly, I would like to say that if we look at the first, second, and third generation IP, they've been basically an evolution of different technologies and different trends and different requirements in the market. Third generation was about building the internet. Fourth generation is about the internet becoming mobile. And who's best to really address this this environment than Ericsson. So we, especially here in San Jose, we bring in the best of both worlds, the mobile side and the IP side, and we feel that's the cornerstone of fourth generation. Yeah. So we start with that, and then go back to the requirements of bandwidth, application, signaling, and processing. Those are important things. So those have been the requirements for us of how we build and how we look at the platforms and building the networks of the future. So the way we will build it is through three things. Fourth generation IP talks about building the network through simple, smart, and scalable. And those three are the pillars that we're talking to our customers about building the network of the future.
Yeah, and when you, let me ask you a little bit about these three things. So with the simple network, Ericsson talks a lot about uniting packet and transport networks in the core and through the metro and so forth. It seems like MPLS is a very important technology in that area, and Ericsson's really pushing a lot of the standardization, especially on MPLS TP, for example. Now here, I'm interested in your views of development of optical and packet integration through this new portfolio as well. Right.
Well, simple. We'll talk about simple a bit, and simple is really about simplifying the build out of the network. As you can imagine, these trends are forcing our customers, our partners, to rethink the way they build the network. And it's important for us to, as we move into this next phase of fourth generation build out, that we present them with a simple ways of building the network. So we talked about, you've mentioned the collapse of optical and IP, which is one way of doing it. The convergence of mobile and fixed. The ability really at the end of the day to drive any device, any application from anywhere into a converged network, and at the same time offer a management and network management capability that covers across the whole network. So simplifies the operations aspect of the network, the build out of the network, both on the CapEx and OpEx.
And we should mention that another new platform coming out from Ericsson as part of this is the IPT NMS network management system, which spans across all these domains that you cover as well.
That is correct. Yeah. And this is something that we're focusing on because we really believe as we move forward, not only the management aspect of the network, but taking it over to the application, to correlation of data, any reporting aspect of it, performance, so on and so forth.
Thanks. I'd also like to ask you about the other two pillars, smart and scalable. I think these are a lot to do with the edge and what you're doing with the SSR platform. Policy control and scaling both the data plane and the control plane. Tell me a little bit about these.
Well, smart has many elements in it. Number one, we need to build a network to be very secure. Number two, we need to provide a lot of intelligence in the network because we need to turn on these assets that our customers have into a revenue generating basically models. Today, a lot of the penetration from our customers is around all you can eat or flat fee. And that's a good thing to do when you're out there trying to attack and capture users and capture markets. But we really believe, and the smart foundation of this network is really to provide intelligence to not only deliver the flat fee or the all-you-can-eat type of approach, but also give them the transaction-based services, the high profitable services that we believe our customers need to have so they can fight or deal with this over-the-top players that are really today, if I can say, monetizing and really capturing the bigger revenue, the bigger piece of the revenue in the network.
And we also talked a little bit about the scale challenges of both capacity, with video, and you mentioned over the top, but also the sheer number of connections and devices that's going to be out there.
Absolutely. A lot of our competitors focus a lot on the bandwidth, and they talk about price per port, and also, 10 gig, basically 40 gig, 100 gig ports. But as I've mentioned, the balance of these three dimensions that I mentioned, the bandwidth, the application, and the signaling or processing is the magic when you're building these platforms moving forward. So scale is another element there that we have to deal with. We've talked about 50 billion connections moving forward. It could be 100 billion connections, but the scale is immense to where most of these devices could be accessing the network for 10 seconds and off. Some of these devices could be on all the time. Some of these devices could on up and down, continuously, requesting different bandwidth, different speeds, different type of quality of service. This will create an immense signaling issue, processing issues. So when you look at platforms today, basically looking at it just from a bandwidth perspective is no longer a way to acquire a platform or to think about acquiring a platform. You have to look at the balance between these three things, because our customers, in order to be successful, have to balance between the scale for these plethora of devices, different type of devices, and the size of devices, but also the bandwidth and the applications.
Absolutely. And if anybody would like to find out more about the 4th generation IP story or the SSR product, then please go to Ericsson.com. And thank you, George, for spending some time with us today. I've appreciated your thoughts. Thank you for listening to IP Talk Radio. We're always interested in hearing your feedback as well. So you can email us with any comments at iptalkradio@ericsson.com. I'm your host, Matthew Smith, and I'll see you next time.